Alright, in this video tutorial we're going to dive headfirst into DMX fixtures, how to map them, how to set them up, and then at the very end hopefully we'll have a few looks, or at least jam a little bit on the controls and see what that looks like. So this is a complex tutorial and we're going to just dive right into it because there's a lot to cover. So I'm going to go ahead and get my scene here set up. This is how it was at the end of the last tutorial, and if you are jumping into this series just for the DMX stuff, I guess it's not too necessary for you to go back and see the others, but if you are doing LED as well, I highly recommend starting from the beginning of this tutorial series. It's going to take you a couple hours to get here, but it is well worth it. Alright, so in the I/O tab we have a few things here. I'm going to go and delete these. And this is the system node. We can't delete that. That's why I gave this little message. And then over here, the projector, let's go ahead and assign that default texture, and then we can collapse this entire tree. This entire device tree, object tree here is for our panels, and we are going to be ignoring those for this tutorial. So I'm going to collapse them and turn off the visibility. And so once we've done that, we can go ahead and get rid of this selection set. And this is a fine place to save the scene and project so that we can start fresh or revert if we have any issues. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Tutorials, Advanced. I'm going to save over 6, which is another file that we're not using until now, and we're good to go. So I'm going to start off by showing you how fixtures work on the lowest level, and then we're going to back up and use a tool that's going to help automate the creation of our DMX fixtures. One thing we have here under Tools is the DMX Fixture Wizard. This is actually a very straightforward tool. We're going to talk about it here in a moment. This is the de facto way you should use to create your fixtures for the most part. But there are situations where you're going to need to get in there and deal with the nitty-gritty nuts and bolts. And so we're going to talk about that first so you're aware of it. And then if you are in need of that, we can go over a whole tutorial on that later. So, alright. The first thing we want to do is create a device. We're going to need to talk to these LEDs, and once I create that device, I'm going to right click to place it at the origin, and then I'm going to put that up a little bit in my world so it's not in the way. I'm going to call this device DMX. And now if I hop over to my Advotech Assistant and do a search, you'll notice that we have a few things here. We're using this for the LEDs. We could ignore these second and third ones, and then this fourth one here is a Pixelite 4, which is set to receive streaming ACN and relay that to DMX on Universe 13. So all we really need from here is Universe 13 and the IP address, which is 10.10.10.2. So for this, well, I take that back. Normally we would need the IP address for ArtNet, and if you're doing unicast streaming ACN, you would need it, but for traditional multicast, you do not need it. So actually all we need is that universe, which is 13, and we don't need to enter it here because that's going to be on the fixture side. We do need to set a different ID. One of the things that we have going on in the LED panels is for this device we have a device ID of 1, and if you look at the fixtures, all of these fixtures must match that device ID. Otherwise, this device does not consider these fixtures part of its array. So, for this device, we can just use the second one in the number scheme here and just pick 2. And that's good to go. And so once we've done that, we need to create a fixture. So I'm going to create a fixture, and if you don't have this screen here, just click on the Create tab in the bottom left and click Fixture. And then right click somewhere in the viewport to put that at the origin. I'm going to hit F on the keyboard to home in on that fixture, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and now we're good to go. So there's a few things to note. We had a message that popped up down here that you might have seen. It says, warning, fixture 1 contains empty chan orders. They will not be mapped properly until they contain some. What this means is if you look at the attributes for this fixture, we have a field called chan order. This is very important. We're going to come back to this here in a moment, but this actually is irrelevant until we have some picks and some channels in our actual fixture. If we look at the fixture tab of our, if we have our fixture selected and go to the picks tab, and you know you're in the picks mode because of the blue outline. If we open the fixture editor over here and we go to channel map, you might have mask open if you're in the last tutorial, but click on chan map. You'll notice that if you click home, you don't have anything here. You have 1, but this actually is empty. And we know this is empty because in the outliner it says 0 in parentheses. 0 channels in this device. So the way we add channels is we need to have a pix first. We add channels to. A pix is the unit of GeoPix. It is not a pixel. A pixel can be a pix, but a pix can hold red, green, blue. It can hold 5, 10, 16, 30 channels. It doesn't really matter. It's up to you and what kind of devices you're mapping. So up until now, we've used fixtures and generators, which are primarily made for LED projects. Generators take care of the creation of all this stuff. They take care of creating the channels, the channel order, and they also take care of the other stuff that happens in the back end. But since we're doing DMX stuff, sometimes we may need to deal with things manually. So that's what I'm going to show you here. So in Pix mode, you want to change your tool mode to Pix Add. And once you've done that, you'll see a message at the top that says click to add Pix, escape to cancel. If you are holding S on your keyboard, you'll see that the snap constraint is enabled, and you'll see a faint orange dot around your icon. And so I would just go ahead and click once with your left mouse button, and you will see a message pop up, but you will see nothing else change. You will, however, over here in the outliner, see that fixture 1 now has a channel length of 3. So it gives. If we hit escape and we go into our fixture editor, you'll notice that if you hit the home button, if you don't see this, you should now see a red, a green, and a blue column in the channel map. And what this means, when you add a pix by default, it adds these 3 channels and nothing else. It assumes you're working with pixels. And even if you're working with DMX lights, you traditionally, unless you have a color gobo type device, you're going to have a red, green, and a blue channel for most lights, right? Most lights will have that. And so that's a good starting point for the most part. And so if you want to get rid of these channels and make your own, you can click the X. But if you have a few more channels you want to add like us, then we can just go over here to the field and type in pan, for example, tilt, etc., etc. And you can right click, mouse, drag around this area. It's just a basic viewport. And you can hit home to bring yourself back to square one. So that's the basics of adding channels, and you can of course delete them with the X. And once you have channels in here, they can be accessed elsewhere. So let's go ahead and put back, let's just leave it at red, green, blue for now. We're not actually going to build our fixture this way. We're just showing you how things work. So if you go back to object mode, and we still have fixture 1 selected, you'll notice that after we added that channel, or that pix to our fixture, we now have something in our chan order here. We have red, comma, green, comma, blue. And this is important because the actual list we saw before is unordered. This will actually give us the order of our fixture channels. So we need to add red, green, blue, which we did, and then we had to specify the order that they should appear in, which is red, green, blue. If you specify red and nothing else, your green and blue channels inside your fixture will be ignored. They won't even be considered. They're as good as gone. So whatever you add in terms of actual fixture channels, so we have red, green, blue, pan. If we had pan, tilt, and actually we're going to rename this to TLT, and I'll explain why later. Actually, I'll explain it now. When you have channels here, you can only have 4 characters or less, and this is so that they fit inside of this window. This may change in the future, but for now, just keep your names to a minimum or maximum of 4 characters. So, going back to object mode, you'll notice that chan order is still what we left it at before. It only updates this when you add a pix to your fixture, and since we just added a channel, we need to go here and manually specify the order that they appear in. So if we have a moving headlight that's 5 channels wide, and it is a red, a green, a blue, a pan, and a tilt in that order, then we would specify those in that order here. And so this would be how you would set up your chan order. And these names have to match the names of the channels inside your fixture. It's very technical and very very possible to screw this up, which is why you should avoid doing this manually if at all possible. And you should go ahead and use the tools and get used to using them, and then see how that ends up populating these fields, and then from there you can modify and tweak that to your own liking. One other thing to note, we have an error down here that says Fixture 1 address offset overlaps with Fixture 1, please fix. What that means is because we have channel 1, universe 1, subnet 1, net 1, this overlaps with Fixture 1 over here. So what gives? How do we fix this? Well, Fixture 1 over here, and we should actually rename this to something more useful, even though we're going to delete it soon. Fixture DMX lights. This fixture has a device ID of 1, which is a problem because our device DMX here is set to 2, and we need to have any devices that, or any fixtures that are associated with that device, be set to the same thing. So when we fix that, we just put a 2 in here, and you'll notice that the error will go away because now there's no longer an overlap, we're on a different device. So that's the basic rundown of how you deal with fixtures from a very low level perspective, but we're not going to do that, and you shouldn't unless you have to. So I'm going to delete that fixture, and I'm going to go up to Tools, the DMX Fixture Wizard, and we're going to specify what our fixture looks like here in number of channels. But before we do that, we need to actually know what we're making. And so for that, I have a few images of the manual for these lights. So there's 2 lights. This is a little bit more complicated, so we'll save this one for a second. But this is a 16 channel light, and there's a few extra things that are a little bit more annoying to deal with. But then over here, the BI lights, which is the 2 on the corners that are elevated up in the air, we're going to use the 10 channel mode, and these are already wired and set up, so we don't have to deal with any DMX stuff on the hardware side. All we have to do is map them out to the right address. So I believe I have a file, DMX arrangements right here. So this is going to be very helpful for us. I've already set this up ahead of time, and this is basically what each of the lights are set to in terms of address, starting address and width. And haze is going to be on, let's just say 250. Towards the end of the spectrum, we don't need to have it anywhere else in the beginning. It's just going to be very straightforward. And actually, that's a pretty good example of something we could set up first, because we're going to need the haze machine anyways working pretty soon here to visualize these lights, and it makes sense to set that up first. So for a haze machine, at least the one I have, it's only a 1-channel fixture, so I'll set this to 1. And let's give this a name. Let's call this haze machine. And for device ID, it's going to be the device ID number 2. And now we need to give the only channel that's going to have a name. We'll call this haze, H-A-Z-E. That's 4 characters is the max you can have, and once you enter that, you have unlocked the button, and you can just click create. Okay, so we've created a haze machine fixture, and of course there's not much to look at, it's just an icon. And if we head over to the Pix tab, we select and open our fixture editor and hit the home button, you'll see that we have 1 channel and it's called haze. And then if we collapse this, go back to object mode, you'll see that the channel order also has haze, and you'll also see the device ID is set to 2. And of course the actual channel offsets have not been set, but we just need to set those very quickly. And so haze being 250, let's go ahead and set that to 250. And I'm going to go verify that this is set to the right channel on the device. And what I found out is that actually that light is set to 510 as a channel offset. So let's go ahead and go with that. And if we remember back in the Add the Tech Assistant Let me go and update this in my file here. 510. Universe 13 is our crossover universe, so we just need to type that in here, and we're good to go. This would work if we had some kind of projector or content being sent to it. And so how do we actually get this rigged up and working? So we have this projector here, and we're going to use this for other stuff. It's kind of a good projector to save for our red, green, blue channels. So let's just call this from P1 to RGB. And let's just go ahead and duplicate that. Let's turn off the original, and let's rename this new projector to Haze. P Haze. And I'm going to go and reset this and bring it back to home base here. And let's see here, we've got our Haze fixture, and we want to group these two things together because we're not going to really keep these as part of our main system. They're going to be off to the side, and you'll see why here in a moment. So we call this G Haze, and we'll scoot this back maybe 20, and we'll go and scale this down to 0.25, 0.25, 0.25, and I don't know if you can see that black dot right here, but this is actually our pix. It's a little bit above our fixture, and this is how the DMX Fixture Wizard creates stuff. So we actually want to move our projector up until it's hitting that. It's encapsulated in that area. And then we can go ahead and clear out texture and do a color override. And let's go and reset that to 0. And so far you haven't seen anything happen. Everything looks pretty inert, but that's because our projector is actually still trying to address the red, green, blue channels that exist in our scene, and that is normally okay as a default, but for Haze we want to change this. So let's go and right click and clear all of these out. And the way routing RGBA works, the texture that your projector has at max 4 channels. It has these 4, and we need to tell the projector where to send these channels to. Traditionally, you just map red to red, green to green, blue to blue, and you have your pixels lighting up and they look correct. But when it comes to multi-channel fixtures that are DMX usually in nature, then you have sometimes 4, 10, 15, 20. And so you're going to need more than one projector to address a fixture that's that large. For Haze, we only have one channel, and so we only have to worry about this red channel. We could use any of these, but we're going to use red just because it's at the top and it's easy, and so great. We'll type in HAZE to routing R, and then once we've done that, we can start adjusting this value. And in theory, we should be seeing something happen, and so we're not. So this is a good opportunity to troubleshoot and see what's going on there. So for whatever reason, this is set to 512. It should be 510. And did that start working? No, it did not. And the reason why is my device is not enabled. So let's turn that on. And now that it's on, you can see the Haze machine is clearly working. And this could turn into a mess pretty quick, so we want to have a way to dial this back when we're done. So obviously let this go and just keep filling the room with Haze. I'm going to go ahead and quit this. Now that we've tested it and we've basically established that we have communication with the fog machine, we'll go and turn this back down to 0 and leave it at that for now. Since this is working, we have this nice portable little group here that contains everything about our Haze machine. So let's go ahead and move this way off to the side. We can put it up in the air, it doesn't really matter. Let's go and put it up in the air, I guess. No, let's just move it off to the left. Somewhere over here. Maybe negative 750. And we're going to finish rigging this up. And to rig this up, it would be nice that if we had the Haze machine just connected to a single slider on our MIDI controller. And the way we're going to do that is by hooking up. I have a slider here. I've already got labeled Haze, and it's a great one to use. So I'm going to use that. and I have to do this in the I/O tab. So the first thing we need to do is turn this projector from from color override to texture mode, right? Because we want to plug a texture in here that's coming from somewhere else. So in the I/O tab, we can go down here to our MIDI, and if we have things connected and we move a slider, we should see it show up here. And by the way, if you don't see anything show up when you're moving a slider, after you have GeoPix started, turn your MIDI controller off and back on, and you should see things show up after that. And if you don't, scroll down to the MIDI section and make sure you choose your input and outputs, and then you should be good to go after that. So 1_8 seems to be our slider of choice here, so I'm going to go ahead and place this somewhere up here. And 1_8 has to do with the index and the channel of the MIDI controller that you are moving, but we're going to rename this to MIDI. Let's keep it short, M_haze. And that's good. So now if we move this, we've got a slider, it's working. So let's go ahead and pipe this into our haze projector. And so we'll open our I/O textures and we'll click on M_haze. And now when we move our slider up, our haze machine turns on. And we can dial it down to 50%, or we can turn it off altogether. So we'll leave it off for now. We're probably going to have to kick it back up a notch once we get the movers going, but there's no need at the moment. But we've established the first thing, and we can definitely guarantee there's connection going out to the Pixelite, which is good. Sometimes that's the trickiest part getting started with DMX, is not knowing where the point of failure is. Sometimes it's your hardware connection, sometimes it's a router issue, sometimes it's an issue in GeoPix. You got to figure out where it is, and then troubleshoot it from there. One thing that can help you with troubleshooting in the device DMX, or any device for that matter, is the output monitor. If you click on that, it's going to open a floating window, and the controls in here are the same as other 2D viewports. You hold Alt and right mouse, you can drag around, and you can use the mouse wheel to zoom quite far, and you can almost barely see it at the moment, but if I zoom back in a bit, you can see it again. This is essentially one universe, and so if we go over here and zoom in, you'll see the labels. Channel C0, universe 13, that's the important part, and then we have all 512 channels here that we can see. Now we know we set our fog machine to the very end of the spectrum, 510, and so if I move that slider now, you'll see that this is going from 0 to 255, so it verifies that this is the information going out into our network, essentially. So that's looking good. You can hit H to home and it'll bring it back here. And once we've checked all that out, we're good to proceed. So we've got these next. We'll probably do these next. And in fact, I think we'll go ahead and stop there and save that for another tutorial and break this up into several videos. So we'll jump into that right away in the next video. Thanks for watching.